Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into some source material covering recent political and, well, judicial tensions coming out of Turkey.
That's right. And right at the heart of the notes you shared is this news about an investigation.
An investigation against the main opposition leader, Özgür Özel, from the CHP party.
Exactly. That's the central piece of information.
And the sources give reasons, right? What are the stated grounds?
Well, according to the material, it boils down to accusations aimed at Istanbul's chief prosecutor, Akın Gürlek.
Okay.
Specifically, things like threatening a judicial officer and also publicly insulting a public servant.
Okay, threatening and insulting. So these are legal terms being used. The sources suggest this comes from things Özal said about Gürlek.
Yeah, precisely. Statements Özal reportedly made about Gürlek's actions, his decisions in certain specific cases.
Any examples given in the material?
They do mention some. For instance, the sources note Özal apparently called Gürlek the palace's executioner in the past.
Wow.
So the material kind of frames this investigation as, a direct outcome of those sorts of public comments and the political heat they generated.
Right, but here's where it gets broader, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your sources don't just leave it there. They seem to use this specific event.
As a launch pad.
Yeah.
To talk about much bigger questions.
Bigger questions being raised about, what? Judicial independence. Oversight in Turkey?
Exactly that. So our mission here, just sticking to the material provided, is really to connect those dots for you. Between this Özal investigation and those wider systemic critiques the sources are highlighting.
Make the connections clear. Got it. Did the sources mention which specific case Özal was criticizing Gürlek over?
Yes, they gave the example of the arrest of Esenyurt Mayor Ahmet Özer.
Okay.
And Özal, according to the material, claimed Gürlek's involvement or handling of that was, well, politically driven.
I see. And that specific dispute then leads the sources to look at the oversight body.
Directly. It leads them into a critical look at the Council of Judges and Prosecutors, the HSK.
The HSK. Okay. What do the sources tell us about them? Why are they central here?
Well, the HSK is supposed to be the body that oversees the judiciary, disciplining prosecutors, judges, that sort of thing.
But, I sense a but.
But the sources flag some significant concerns about its impartiality, especially when politics gets involved.
And why do they raise those concerns? What's the reasoning given in the material?
This is really a key point they make. It notes that the HSK's members, all 13 of them, they're appointed.
Appointed by who?
By Turkey's parliament and the president. The sources actually cite Wikipedia for this structural detail, noting it changed after the 2017 constitutional reforms.
Ah.
And the argument presented in the sources is that this very appointment method raises serious questions. Can the council really be independent when looking into cases that might involve, say, political figures or touch on executive power, like this Özal case?
So the structure itself, the fact that the political branches appoint the judicial overseers, that's seen as the potential issue.
That's exactly the connection the sources draw. And they don't stop there. They tie this critique of the HSK into, well, even broader concerns about Turkey's whole presidential system.
Okay, so it's layered, not just the HSK in isolation, but how it fits into the bigger system, according to these sources. How do they make that link?
The material brings in a 2023 study. It was published in the Strategic Public Management Journal.
Right.
And this study, as cited in the material, suggests that under this presidential system, the checks and balances, they're weaker. There's been a shift of power, a significant one, towards the executive.
Yeah, and the implication is?
The implication argued in the sources is that this power shift potentially reduces judicial independence overall, which makes that HSK appointment structure, particularly problematic in this specific context. The Özal Gürlek incident is used almost like a case study for these points.
And the sources mention public reactions, too, how people are feeling about this.
Yeah, they touch on that. They note some comments on social media about this incident. One example they gave was, "Mozkum Heratin Hoşgeldiniz,"
which means?
Welcome to a banana republic.
Woof. Okay.
The sources use reactions like that to sort of highlight what they see as public frustration, a feeling that maybe accountability is missing when the oversight bodies are appointed by political actors. It's presented as a symptom, really.
Okay, let's try and pull the main threads together then, based purely on the source material we've discussed.
Right. So the core argument presented is that this investigation against Özgür Özel isn't just politics as usual. It shines a light on these fundamental worries about judicial independence, particularly focused on the HSK.
The Council of Judges and Prosecutors.
Yeah. And specifically, how its members get appointed by the president and parliament, which, as the sources note, changed post-2017. This structure raises flags about impartiality in sensitive cases.
And building on that, the sources bring in that 2023 study to suggest this fits into a wider critique of the presidential system. Weakened checks, more executive power, potentially less judicial independence.
Exactly. And that Banana Republic comment mention is used by the sources to signal this perceived public frustration with how things are working.
So it leaves us with quite a challenging thought, really, directly from the sources' line of argument.
It does. Given the system described in the material where the overseers of the judiciary are chosen by the political branches, what does that structure inherently imply about the practical difficulty, the challenge of guaranteeing genuine judicial impartiality? That's something the sources really prompt you to think about.